Hey everyone, welcome back to the Blockbuster Show. I'm Adam Sykes, and today we're looking at the early 2000s PG-13 comedy from Henry Selick, the director of The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, 2001's Monkeybone.
If it screams, if it swings, ooga, ooga, da, 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 it's got to be
drinks for everybody.
Monkeybone. 20th Century Fox presents Brendan Fraser, Bridget Fonda,
The woman I love is living with a little monkey that looks like me.
Dive, dive, dive!
Ow!
What a lucky girl.
Monkeybone.
It's rude, it's raunchy, it's totally outrageous. Brendan Fraser goes bananas in this comedy that breaks all the rules. After a car crash sends repressed cartoonist Stu Miley into a coma, he and his mischievous Monkeybone, his hilarious horny alter ego, wake up in a whacked-out way station for lost souls. When Monkeybone takes over Stu's body and escapes to wreak havoc on the real world, Stu has to find a way to stop him before his sister pulls the plug on reality forever. Saturday Night Live's Chris Kattan, Bridget Fonda, and Whoopi Goldberg co-star in this inventive blend of live-action and stop-motion animation, loaded with must-see, eye-popping FX and some of the crudest laugh-out-loud humor since South Park. I want to highlight, this is an actual description on the back of the DVD box. This is holy fuck. So the movie is about Brendan Fraser, who plays a comic strip artist slash cartoonist who, very meek kind of guy, doesn't really stand up for himself, has a lot of psychological baggage because he's dating this doctor who helped him get over a series of bad nightmares, and so eventually he wants to propose to her. And while all that's going on, it seems that his comic strip, Monkeybone, has gotten picked up by 20th Century Fox, and they say that it's going to be the next big thing next to The Simpsons, even though the animation that they show, like the pilot animation that they show at the beginning, looks like it's on par with that fucking Big Mouth show on Netflix. Also established this reoccurring character throughout the movie that Brendan Fraser has this best friend who's like his producer, manager kind of guy, who is like so confident that Monkeybone is going to be a success, he has all these different articles of merchandise prepared. Or there's even an actual show. They just got a pilot greenlit. And so one of the things they have is an inflatable Monkeybone thing. Shenanigans happen where the monkey gets inflated inside of his car and it causes the car to go careening into traffic, and then it just cuts to later after there's a car crash sound effect, and Fraser is just like in a coma and being hauled off to the hospital. Keep in mind, his girlfriend, played by Bridget Fonda, she was in the car as well, and the worst thing she gets is a cut on her forehead. I watched the trailer before I watched the movie, and they show Brendan Fraser's character in the trailer getting out of the car. The worst thing that happens in the trailer is that the car gets wrecked, and then he gets out of the car, goes into a phone booth, and then a pipe that they hit got dislodged, and then the pipe goes falling and hits him while he's in the phone booth, and that's what makes him comatose.
Until it all came crashing down.
So from there, you got Brendan Fraser going to this place called Downtown, which serves as like multiple different things. It's like a purgatory world. It's also a sleep world for people who are in comas and are temporarily out of it. So it's like a purgatory, it's a sleep world, and it's also a bit of a fantasy world because Stu's creation Monkeybone is there. If anything, it's kind of like that one movie from Ralph Bakshi that was trying to be like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Cool World. Which is not a very good movie, but I mean, as confusing as the shit in that movie was, it at least made sense. It was basically trying to be the darker, grittier, edgier version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where, we go to a cartoon world and there's all this grittiness, and there's, the evil Hollywood played by Kim Basinger. Oh, she wants to become a human, and, there's the human world and there's the cartoon world. But here it's like they couldn't decide on one thing specifically, so it's like, it's purgatory, it's a sleep world slash nightmare world, and it's also a little bit of a fantasy world because there's his cartoon creation. It is very similar to Cool World in that they wanted it to be darker when they originally planned it, because this is actually based on a graphic novel. It's a Dark Town but they switched it to downtown for the movie, and they started downplaying a whole lot of things so that the movie could get a PG-13 rating. Very similar to Cool World. Going back to the actual movie itself, here we're introduced to Monkeybone, who is stop motion. And I mean, if anything, the stop motion effects are kind of neat. I mean, that just kind of shows Henry Selick's signature style in there. So it's like that was relatively impressive for the time. For 2001, it's like, that's all right. I also feel really bad for John Turturro, who plays him. They speed up his voice, and man, John Turturro, I am so sorry. The character of Monkeybone basically functions as he's just supposed to be the, supernatural, fictional, wisecracking, smartass sidekick, basically. Like, after they did it in Beetlejuice, a lot of movies were trying to replicate that, and I think the only movie that came close to successfully doing it was Robin Williams as the genie in Aladdin. But there's always that movie where it's like, it's an imaginary friend or a fictional character. In this case, it's his cartoon creation. And they always had to have that kind of like, fast talking, oh, how you doing, boss? Like, kind of New York accented thing going on. And it's just like, here it's like, they try way too hard to make him funny, which made me even more sad that it was John Turturro doing the voice. They eventually established that there is a way to get out of downtown, and that is if a Reaper who works for the Grim Reaper, if you get an exit pass, you're allowed to go back to the world of the living, basically. Meanwhile, in the world of the living, they have a bunch of stuff going on. Like, they established that Brendan Fraser has a sister who he made a deal with when they were kids, that the first one who was potentially going to die, they would get all their money, and after a certain amount of time, they would pull the plug on them. And so they established that she's constantly snooping around and trying to be like, is it almost time yet? Is it almost time to pull the plug, Doc? And it's like, really, I don't know what the whole point of that character was. She doesn't do anything in the whole movie. Like, after eventually Brendan Fraser comes back to life, she doesn't do anything in the whole plot. So it's like, her whole thing was pointless. One thing that is set up in this whole section of the movie that actually does become a key plot point is that Bridget Fonda, she's a doctor. She deals with the psychological. Established that she has this serum that is meant to either increase or decrease nightmares. Specifically, it's to increase, because she has this plan to try and wake up Brendan Fraser from his coma by injecting him with the serum that will increase his nightmares to hopefully scare him awake, which is just an excuse for them to do a nightmare sequence for a little bit where Brendan Fraser is a head on a carrot body, and there's these doctors with these gigantic arms and eyes and hands doing surgery. It looked like something out of a Tim Burton movie or like a Marilyn Manson music video. It just felt like that was their excuse to do some really wacky shit right there. Meanwhile, back in Looney Land, they decide that they're going to steal an exit pass from Death, who is for some reason played by Whoopi Goldberg. Because, I mean, after Theodore Rex, that's a good career move. They basically established that Death has an army of Reapers working for her, and there's the token scene of them dressing up as a Reaper to try and get the exit pass. There's eventually a wacky chase scene. That's where the nightmare thing I mentioned earlier happens. Point is, they successfully escape with the exit pass, and here is where Monkeybone actually backstabs Brendan Fraser, because it turns out he's working with a character they established a little earlier, Hypnos, the god of nightmares, who is basically trying to spread nightmares in the world of the living, so he sends Monkeybone in there. This basically plays into the third act of the movie, where Brendan Fraser, who is now possessed by Monkeybone, is using that nightmare serum we referenced earlier. He's injecting it into these Monkeybone toys. That fart. Gotta get your easy fart joke in there. He injects the nightmare serum into these Monkeybone toys so they could spread nightmares in the world of the living. And if you're really expecting anything out of Hypnos, the person that's responsible for this whole plan to spread nightmares in the world of the living, he really doesn't do much. He really doesn't do anything after a while. Like, it really feels like a pointless thing. It's like they had that plan, but for a majority of the second act, it's really just a lot of Brendan Fraser being possessed by the monkey. And, you got Brendan Fraser now acting like this Monkeybone character. He's wearing sunglasses and acting like a Hollywood hotshot. And, there's a scene where he tries to have sex with Bridget Fonda, and it's just weird. I mean, You want to talk about uncomfortable, there's a part where they straight up have a downward angle shot where it's basically in between Brendan Fraser's legs as he's like doing this like sexy dance. It's really uncomfortable.
Here I come, baby. I'm coming to get you.
Meanwhile, real Brendan Fraser is kept in fantasy purgatory world, and they keep him as a prisoner. And one interesting concept that makes me wish they would have gone a little bit more into something like this, and they probably would have in an original draft of the script. They established that like there are certain people who are like locked up, and that their creations eventually took over them in the real world. Like Edgar Allan Poe is there, Stephen King is there. That's really interesting, and it makes me wish that they highlighted something like that more. Like that would have been the movie's main premise. But I don't know. Like the movie wants to be a body switch comedy, sort of, and then eventually they're like, oh yeah, well, he's there to spread nightmares. I guess we gotta make that be a part of the third act. You can't just have it that the stakes are very simple and just have it that Brendan Fraser wants to get back so he can propose to his girlfriend and actually get his body back so that he's not stuck there. But no, you gotta add this whole spreading nightmares thing in the world of the living thing as a means to stop him. Eventually, Brendan Fraser breaks out of this prison they're holding him in thanks to a character they established earlier, this bartending cat girl named Kitty. He goes to Death, and Death says, you know what? I like your cartoons. You're funny. Okay, yeah, you got 1 hour in the world of the living to get your body back. So she makes him possess Chris Kattan, who is a recently deceased organ donor. And so there's this whole thing of like him running out and doctors chasing after him to get his organs. Eventually they're going to unleash all the now injected with nightmare serum Monkeybone toys at this big premiere. Brendan Fraser as Chris Kattan shows up to confront Brendan Fraser possessed Monkeybone guy. There's a scene where he reveals that it's him to Bridget Fonda because, oh, he has these memories, and he calls her Doc, which is his nickname he had for her. So, oh, she knows it's him now. Eventually, there's a chase sequence. They go up the building, and they end up on a giant Monkeybone balloon. They fight for a little bit. Eventually, a cop shoots the Monkeybone balloon out of the sky, of course, in its butt, so that it makes a fart joke again. They both end up plummeting to the ground. They're both dead. They're now back in downtown. Why they don't just go to heaven or hell straight up, why they both go to purgatory feels a little too convenient just so we can wrap up the movie. So as they both end up there, they come across Death piloting a giant robot like it's a steampunk anime all of a sudden. And she sets things right by putting Monkeybone back into Brendan Fraser's brain, basically, and sends him back to the world of the living. So now he has his own body again. He is now proposed and going to be married to Bridget Fonda, and it ends on more animations of everyone dressed up as fucking monkeys. The thing is, I don't want to hate this movie. It has interesting concepts in it. The thing that weighs it down is, of course, the studio meddling and the tonal confusion. Brendan Fraser is an actor I actually really like. I feel really bad for Brendan Fraser because more often than not, he ended up doing really bad comedies. But he could be good in certain comedies he was put in, and he was good in action movies. He could be a good leading man. It's just that here they give him the archetype, you know, oh, wimpy main character who needs to learn to stand up for himself. Totoro, I just felt horribly sorry for as Monkeybone. Like, that could have been a funny character, but it's just that they just make him the archetype, like, just knock off Beetlejuice. It's like, oh, you're supposed to be the funny supernatural sidekick, basically. That's all you're given. Certain characters I feel like they just set up and could have done more with, but they didn't do anything with. The producer, manager, sidekick guy, all they really do with him at the end is he gets hit with the nightmare gas, and he's now running around naked because he thinks that clothes are attacking people.
People, for the love of God, take off your clothes.
Sister, again, totally pointless character. She was just there just to add a little bit of a ticking clock. Like, oh, she's trying to pull the plug on Brendan Fraser and get the money. But, oh, once Monkeybone possesses Brendan Fraser, she just drops from the movie entirely. Kitty, the cat girl bartender, like, again, it feels like they had more things with her. It feels like they kind of set her up as like an alternative love interest for Brendan Fraser, but because he's been there, they established he's been in there for 3 months. So it's like, oh, maybe they can do something with that. Maybe these are characters they could have done something with, but again, the studio was like, yeah, PG-13, gotta cut the interesting stuff down and make way for more PG-13 fart jokes. So yeah. Visually, it's bizarre and it's interesting, kind of. I mean, it does have that Henry Selick style, which I wouldn't really say worked in the movie's favor, but it was interesting. The visuals were interesting, but I mean, it's just that the story is incredibly confused and tonally confused and doesn't know what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it should just be a simple body switch movie where Brendan Fraser has to get his body back, or if they want to have this whole, oh, we gotta stop Hypnos, the god of sleep, the god of nightmares, from, you know, spreading nightmares. Again, they do nothing with that guy after a few scenes. He is just dropped from the movie entirely. This probably could have been something really unique. And there are signs that it could have been something special. Like the visuals that Henry Selick and crew incorporate here could have been something. But of course, the fucking studios had to step right in and be like, no. You can't make the movie you want to make. You gotta make it a PG-13 comedy full of unfunny jokes and fart jokes and sexual innuendos and stuff that we think is going to appease everybody, and in the end, just appease nobody. It's far from the worst movie I've ever seen. It definitely has more personality than most of the other Fox movies I reviewed. Like this, I at least remember more about this movie after sitting through it than something like Gulliver's Travels or Marmaduke. Those were just like boring family movies. This had more personality, but again, totally missed opportunities all throughout. So one more video for Blockbusters this month. I am going to be taking a step back from doing movie reviews, and I'm going to be instead looking at bad movie reviews. Instead of reviewing bad movies, we're going to be reviewing bad movie reviews. And we got a bunch of really bad reviews to look at. We've got Armand White level stuff on the horizon. So look forward to that video when it eventually comes out. Until then, I'm Adam Sykes of The Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
I'll be right back after I choke my monkey!